Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My today's discussion is about the title An increasing number of students are going overseas for tertiary education. To what extent does this overseas study benefit students? My name is Mr. Akinbode. My guest for today is Mrs. Adesolape from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mrs. Adesolape, good afternoon to you.
Good day to you, Mr. Kimbody.
Thank you. Yeah, let me proceed. Most people spend around 15 years of their lives in education, from primary schools to secondary school and to the university. In the past, students only had the opportunity to study in their own country alone. However, nowadays, the new trends and norms are that people are trooping out of their countries to study abroad, most especially at the university level. Basically, for better education, leading to better job opportunities and the quest for greener pasture. While there are some undoubted benefits of this trend, such as the language environment and improvements in the employment prospects, I would like my guest, Mr. Adesolaku from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to point out some significant disadvantages, which to me could be the high cost that will be incurred in securing education abroad. Um, Let me proceed by identifying some key advantages of studying abroad. The first and most important advantage of studying overseas to me is the language learning environment. Students studying overseas will not only have to cope with the local language for their studies, but we also have to use it outside the classroom for their everyday life. These factors should make it relatively easy for such students to advance their language abilities. They tend to learn about new culture, way of life of their host country, food, dressing, and history. Knowledge is power and ignorance is darkness. I will use myself as an example. I've studied abroad and consequently been able to speak their language to some level. I love their food even more than my own local food and even considered making the place my second home. Isn't that great? Another important benefit is employability. Nowadays, increasing globalization means that there are more multinational companies setting up offices in all major countries. These companies will need employees who have varieties of skills, including fluency in more than one language. Students who have studied abroad should find it much easier to obtain job in their kind of companies, in this kind of companies. For example, those who study in China or Korea can speak their language, they will have opportunity to get job there, definitely. Because Chinese and Koreans, they love their language so much, they will appreciate you if you speak their language. I have an uncle who studied in Germany and he learned their language. He now works in one of their biggest companies there. Hence, my guest, Ms. Adesolakwe, I would like to hear your view regarding this development.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kimbody. I will be talking about the disadvantages of studying overseas. The number one disadvantage is expenses because aside from the cost of traveling itself, students are required to pay tuition fee, cost of living, which is much more higher than the student's own country.
Hmm.
Even though students have scholarship to study abroad, they still have to pay more because the scholarship can only cover a fraction of the cost that is needed. Then number two is students are on their own.
Yes.
Living abroad or studying abroad, it's it's something that makes students to be vulnerable to a lot of things because they are living on their own without the protection of their parents.
Yeah.
They can issues like cultural shock. They can have anxiety due to that.
Mm.
Then sadness, isolation, which can be because they don't have their families and friends beside them.
Mm.
Then I would say safety because yeah, safety in terms of not being harmed or not going out at night, like your child being safe, which is something that can be frightening for both parents and students because
Mm.
they might be vulnerable to a lot of things studying abroad on their own. And then number three, which is insurance. When students, when they are sick or 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 they are injured, they need insurance. And
Yeah.
when once they have their insurance back in their home, when they get to abroad, they still have to have their health insurance, which
It's
is
true.
required, like all countries required for people to have health insurance in their own country, and they cannot use their own domestic health insurance plan abroad. So
Mm.
that is which leads to more expenses. So I would say basically the disadvantages of going abroad is more like you have to pay more than what you're paying in your home country. You have
Mm.
to spend more than you're spending in your home country, which might be a burden for both parent and student. So that is my take on the disadvantages of studying abroad. Thank you, Mr. Kimberly.
Thank you, Mrs. Adesolape. Well, in summary, studying abroad has some clear advantages to me, including the language, environment, and increased chances of employment. In addition to the main drawbacks, the heavy financial burden, as pointed out by Minister Adesolape, I believe that this experience is worthwhile for those students whose families can readily afford the expenses. Students without such strong financial support should consider carefully whether the high cost outweigh the benefits to be gained. That is the conclusion. So thank you so much, viewers. Here we come to the end of this discussion. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.